go ahead. I'll start the recording, take my message off, and now we'll get started. So we're in the 10th chapter of Daniel, and I'm going to count everybody while everybody's getting there. Okay. Um, does anybody have anything that they saw this week, or anything you want to bring to the class before we get started in Daniel? Because because I do. We had a revival this week at church. We had a guest preacher from around here, from McGee's Crossroads. Um, Scott Betts. He's a friend of our pastor Anthony, and brought a real good set of messages. And he as he was preaching. This was an old fashioned Baptist revival. I haven't heard one of these, and I don't know when. But this is an old fashioned revival, and and he mentioned a passage um, in Ephesians during one of his messages, and it struck me about what I had mentioned last week. And if you remember last week, I had I had stumbled onto a verse in First Corinthians about that Paul says that there are three kinds of people now. This is First Corinthians 10, chapter 10, verse 31 or so through 33 or so. And he mentions that there are three divisions of people, because he mentions that there are Jews, Gentiles, and the Church of God. And I brought this up last week, as that was a real revelation to me, that on this side of Pentecost, because we all remember, because we had a little quiz, when the church was born. the church the church that we know of now was born on the biblical feast of Shavuot, Pentecost. Um, and that's when the Holy Spirit descended upon the people that were gathered there in that room, and it descended on them as in the Old Testament. But this time there was something new. The Spirit descended on them and stayed with them, because Jesus had told us he would leave us with a comforter. So this time, instead of the Spirit descending, staying with the person until that task that God needed done was done, or the person did something stupid, as in Saul, um, the Spirit stayed, and the Spirit stays with those who have called upon the name of the Lord, called upon the name of now the Lord that was with us on the earth, that paid the price for us, that basically bought us. So that was a revelation to me, in that, since I'm an Old Testament guy, there's always two people. There's Jews, God's chosen, and then there's everybody else. And that's how it is in the Old Testament. And it was a revelation to me, is that didn't make it past Pentecost, because now we have Jews, now we have Gentiles, but now we have something different and new that Paul calls the church, the ecclesia, the gathering, the assembly. And that was a big, because I still am carrying that Old Testament division until that revelation came on me, and I said, that's why some of the New Testament doesn't make any sense to me, because there's something new now in terms of people that God deals with. It's these Jews, these Gentiles, and now the in-between, where instead of Gentiles believing in the Jewish Messiah and going over to be a Jew, they land in the middle. And then Jews, who are God's chosen people, but they realize that the Messiah came, they put their trust in him, and now instead of staying there, they move over to this church thing. And that settles a lot of things to me. I wasn't really comfortable with the fact that Gentiles went over to the Jewish side, but they weren't really Jews, but we are engrafted, and it didn't quite, I couldn't settle on it, but that's the way I understood it until this First Corinthians. All right, now to let you know that God is always watching us, that verse in Ephesians, Ephesians 2, in case if you want to flip to it and follow me, and I know this is off subject, but I think it's really important. Ephesians 2, because some of you may have been wondering, where you may have been struggling with this division of people too. So Ephesians 2 and in verse 11, therefore remember, at one time you Gentiles in the flesh, called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, which is made in the flesh by hands. You Gentiles, remember that you were at a time separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenant of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. All right, so right there, and he was talking about the blood of Christ and how it cleanses. So that was what he was going to. But I had to stop at that one here, because he's talking about Gentiles, and he's saying, remember when you were at that time, which is before you believed, you were separated from Christ. That means separated from God too, separated from the Father and the Son, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel. Now that's a peculiar construction. The commonwealth of Israel, that Greek word there for commonwealth, it's a political type term. So he's talking about alienated from the political nation kind of Israel, not the spiritual one, and strangers to the covenant of the promise. Now, strangers struck me because every one of you knows in the Old Testament, the Jews call a non-Jew, the nations, they call them strangers. And that one struck me. Okay, because one of the things that I wanted to find out, because now we have Jews, Gentiles, and the church. And one of the things that I'm particularly stuck on is that the New Testament is talks about the Old Testament. The New Testament is not making things up. These are things that are supposed to be happening, and we're supposed to know about. So the first thing I'm thinking is, this new thing, the church, I'm kind of wondering, is that in the Old Testament? Should we have known that it was coming? And yeah, it is. when I saw that strangers that Scott brought up in that sermon, I said, I think it's there. I think just like we're seeing in Daniel, we're seeing we're seeing the nation of Babylon, we're seeing the nation of the empire of Media Persia. We're seeing, and Daniel was seeing it too, but now Daniel comes to a point where there's this new thing called the Greeks. Now the Greeks were known at this time, but they weren't that really scary in Daniel's time. So Daniel's thinking, well, I guess the Greeks will get their act together. But then there was this other thing, this iron thing, that was represented by something that was truly scary and a beast that Daniel had no idea what was, but it was scary. That shadow came about. Daniel saw the image of that nation coming, even though Rome was in nobody's mind at that point. So that's what I'm looking for in the Old Testament. And I think I have found it. Now this is not mine. There's a couple of references that I looked through, but I think I found it. The church in the Old Testament, and this is something that I was thinking, how why don't we teach this? So in Exodus, if you go to Exodus, the 12th chapter of Exodus, and let's see where we start. Oh, it's about that last paragraph in the 12th chapter. It starts about verse 43. So Exodus 12 and verse 43. Now this is, let's see, this is where God is setting up the Passover. This is right after the plagues have finished, and this is God right at the Passover setting it up for the people. And he is telling them, you have to remember this time. So this is God teaching what the Passover is supposed to be. So you're at the death of the firstborn, when God passed over the Israelites, killed all the firstborn of Egypt. And God says, and the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is the statute of the Passover. No foreigner shall eat of it, but every slave that is bought for money may eat of it after you have circumcised it. No foreigner or hired worker may eat of it. It shall be eaten in one house, and you shall not take of the flesh outside the house, and you shall not break any of its bones. That's eating of the Passover lamb. Then verse 47, all the congregation of Israel shall keep it. Then here comes the big if. If a stranger is a ger, a non-Israelite. Remember what it says? No foreigner shall eat of it. If a stranger shall sojourn with you and would keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised. Then he may come near and keep it. He shall be as a native of the land, but no uncircumcised person shall eat of it. There shall be one law for the native and for the stranger who sojourns among you. Did you hear what that last one said? There shall be one law for the native and for the stranger who sojourns among you. Well, wait a minute. Didn't you say no foreigner shall eat of it? But God says, if a stranger that stays with the nation wants to keep the Passover, he's circumcised and he can keep the Passover just like a native Jew. Never have I noticed that. Then we go to Numbers. Numbers 15. If you go to Numbers, the 15th chapter, it's a paragraph, the second paragraph, starting at verse 11. Numbers 15:11. Thus shall it be, and this is about laws. This is God setting out His statutes in Numbers, and this is just a whole bunch of this. The people, Moses intercedes for the people. They had rebelled at this point in Numbers, and God proposes a judgment on them, and it's a big mess. And then God stops and talks about the laws of sacrifice. Thus it shall be done for each bull or ram, and for each lamb or young goat. He's telling them how to sacrifice. As many as you offer, so shall you do with each one, and as many as there are. Every native Israelite shall do these things in this way, an offering of, in offering a food offering with a pleasant aroma to the Lord, to Yahweh. And if a stranger is sojourning with you, or anyone is living permanently among you, and he wishes to offer a food offering with a pleasing aroma to Jehovah, he shall do as you do. For the assembly there shall be one statute for you and for the stranger who sojourns with you, a statute forever throughout your generations. You and the sojourner shall be alike before the Lord. What? What? You and the stranger, the sojourner, shall be alike before Jehovah. One law and one rule shall be for you and for the stranger who sojourns with you. I've never heard that preached. Law's supposed to be dead and gone, nailed to the cross. One law for the stranger and for the native. Then in Leviticus, we hit the middle of the law here. In Leviticus 17. Second paragraph, third paragraph, verse 10. Leviticus 17, verse 10. If any one of the house of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn with you among them eats any blood, you will set my face against that person who eats blood and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it for you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement for life. Therefore I have said to the people of Israel, no person among you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger who sojourns among you eat blood. One law for the native and one law for the sojourner. And one last one. Just so you think it's not all in the Torah. The prophets had something to say about it. In Jeremiah, 12th chapter of Jeremiah. This is the whole chapter. I'll cut it short because we got the 10th chapter of Genesis. Jeremiah is complaining to God. Jeremiah sends a complaint to God. Righteous one are you, O Lord, when I complain to you. He even tells him. I mean, he doesn't leave it. He tells him, I'm going to complain. Yet I would plead my case before you. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why do all who are righteous, who are treacherous, thrive? You plant them and they take root. They grow, they produce fruit. You are near in their mouth and far from their heart. But you, O Lord, know me. You see me and test my heart towards you. Pull them out like sheep for the slaughter and set them
Excuse me.
apart for the day of slaughter. How long will the land mourn and the grass of every field wither? For the evil of those who dwell in it, the beasts and the birds are swept away because they said, he will not see our latter end. Jeremiah is complaining that look at these people. He's talking about Babylonians. Look at how these people are thriving, and they are not of you. How can this stand? How can this stand? And Jeremiah goes through a long answer to God. And you can read that for yourself. But down here at the end of the chapter, verse 14 to the end, thus says the Lord concerning all the evil neighbors who touch the heritage that I have given my people Israel to inherit. So God is saying, I'll handle it, Jeremiah. And then he comes in and says, concerning all the neighbors, that's all the countries that are around Jerusalem that had around Israel that had been taking them out. Remember, Jeremiah is right at the end. Northern kingdom's gone, the southern kingdom's about to go. So any of your evil neighbors who touch the heritage is the land, the heritage is the land that I have given my people to inherit. Behold, I will pluck them up from their land, and I will pluck up the house of Judah from among them. He's going to get everybody. And after I pluck them up, I will again have compassion on them. Whoa. And I will bring them again, each to his heritage and each to his land. And it shall come to pass that if they diligently learn the ways of my people, that's you, Jews, to swear by my name as the Lord lives, even as they taught my people to swear by Baal, then they shall be built up in the midst of my people. But if any nation will not listen, then I will utterly pluck it up and destroy it, declares the Lord. Did you hear what he said? Even these even these people that conquered Israel, if they will diligently learn the ways of my people, swear by that name, call on the name of the Lord, and you will be saved, even as they taught my people to swear by Baal, then they shall be built up in the midst of my people. God is saying if they repent and believe, they will prosper in the midst of my people. Jeremiah says that. And then the whole 56th chapter of Isaiah. The whole 56th chapter of Isaiah. Salvation for the foreigners. And you've heard this one, and you can read the whole chapter. But you've heard this one. For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. The Lord God who gathers the outcasts of Israel declares, I will gather yet others to him besides those already gathered. I can't get around that, those verses, and there are more, talking about the Jews and the people traveling with them. I can't get around the fact that the church was foreshadowed in the Old Testament right there. The only problem was it was the Jews that were supposed to be bringing the Gentiles in. And you see why God got so irritated with the Jews and why Jesus hammered them, because the Jews couldn't get over the fact that here are we, the chosen people of God, and we can't get near those people because they're unclean. And oh, by the way, we've got to sacrifice a whole bunch of bulls and animals to clean ourselves every day, just as unclean as they are. You guys think about that this week. The church, I think, was foreshadowed in the Old Testament. It's right. I can't get around it. It's right there. We see the church in the Old Testament, how it should have been. Look at those passages. And you can find out, all you have to do is look for strangers who sojourn with us, sojourners. Look through the Old Testament for those words. And you'll find it's all over the place. It's all over the place. And it's all over the Torah. Not just the prophets, the Torah. It's mostly in the Torah. I can't get around the fact that I think the church was foreshadowed for us right there, and it should not have surprised us. When the church was born at Pentecost, we should not have been surprised. Oh, this is how it should have been. This is how it should have been. So I don't know. Think about that this week. That is a revelation to me. It's a revelation to me to think that we have gone all this time thinking that the church was born at Pentecost, and there we are, something brand new. And yet God had foreshadowed it. God had foreshadowed it the whole time. I can't get around that. Can't get around that. So look at that, and if you come up with an argument for, again, I don't know. This, I have never heard this before, but it's somewhere. I mean, I've found two or three guys that are saying, yeah, look at this. Here it is right here. So this is not something that I made up. It's something I stumbled over and it hit me in the head. So look at that and see if you can find an argument and get me out of this. But I can't. I can't get around it. The church was there in the Old Testament. The church was there. So, any questions on that before we start, Daniel? Look at that carefully, because don't. I've never heard that before in from the pulpit. Never heard it. Never heard it from Sunday school class. So I don't want to get too far out on a limb here. So you you're my fact checkers. Go fact check me. So we finally finished the ninth chapter of Daniel. So I told you to go to the 10th chapter of Daniel, then I led you all over the Bible. Um, but if you still got the 10th chapter of Daniel, remember where we are. We are finishing up Daniel's journey. And remember last week I said that these last three chapters, 10, 11, and 12, probably should be one chapter because this is Daniel's final vision. And if we look at how Daniel has come through this, we see a progression of Daniel in God's eyes. And it's something that this is not the first time this has happened. This is not the first time this has happened. It's illustrative of God and his patience with us as he teaches us his ways. As God teaches us what he needs us to understand, what he would like us to understand, he can't just throw it all at us at once. We can't understand it. So God has patience with us and deals with us as we would deal with a child. So you look at Daniel and how he started. Daniel's first, remember way back, the first thing Daniel did that set him apart was not to have a vision of his own. He interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream. He interpreted, so God, Nebuchadnezzar, uh, actually the first one, remember, he didn't see the dream. God showed it to him. So it was like a felt board, the old Sunday school felt board. God said, here's this, and here's this, and here's this, and here's this. And in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, this is what he saw, and this is what it means. So God taught Daniel what Nebuchadnezzar's dream was that God had given Nebuchadnezzar. And Daniel just went and told it to Nebuchadnezzar. And then we go on to Daniel, who has his own dream. So Daniel has now went from an interpreter to actually having a dream, and a dream is a very low level um, visitation from God. I mean, we have dreams all the time. We have bad dreams. We have good dreams. They're not from God generally. But then God will intervene with a dream, as he did with Nebuchadnezzar. He gave Nebuchadnezzar a dream. Nebuchadnezzar thought it was just another dream, but this was what's important because it had to do with his kingdom. So a dream is a very low volume intervention with God. And then the next thing Daniel has is a vision where Daniel sees this dream. There's a difference between a dream. When you're dreaming, a dream is really hard to deal with, and if you don't write it down when you first get up, it's gone. But a vision is something very different. A vision is it's just like turning on a television set. It's a very real, very vivid movie. And now we come to the last step. Each time Daniel gets more, we say comfortable, but he's scared to death the whole time, gets more comfortable with God's intervention. And this is Daniel's, we call it a vision here, but this is an actual, I can touch it and feel it vision. This one is happening before him. He sees it, but it's real because he can reach out. Actually, he didn't reach out. The angels reached out and touched him. So this is the next level of a vision where you actually have a visitation. This is real, real, real. So this is what Daniel is dealing with. And I'm going to go ahead and start reading, and we're almost at the end of it, but we'll start. I'll start reading in here. So chapter 10. In the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belshazzar. And the word was true, and it was a great conflict. And he understood the word and had understanding of the vision. Next paragraph. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 weeks. I ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entered my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all for the full 3 weeks. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like beryl, his face was like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and the sound of his words was like the sound of a multitude. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great trembling fell upon them, and they fled to hide themselves. So I was left alone, and I saw this great vision, and no strength was left in me. My my radiant appearance was fearfully changed, and I retained no strength. And when I heard the sound of his words, and I heard the sound of when I heard the sound and then I heard the sound of his words. And as I heard the sound of his words, I fell on my face in a deep sleep with my face to the ground. So this is Daniel's vision, and it's a vision, but this this man, this like a man, appeared before him. And this was real because the other guys, they didn't see it, but they felt it, and they cut and ran. This was something that was very, very real. And when you look at the appearance of this visitation, this visitor, clothed in linen, that's a priestly garment. So this is something divine here. This has something to do with priestly type things. A belt of fine gold from Uphaz. Uphaz, there's really not a place that anybody knows who Uphaz is, so it's probably just a descriptive term for a fine gold or a fine gold cloth, something like that. It's a word that we probably lost the meaning of. So it really, until we find out, there's nothing we can affix to that. But we just
I
read it
would
as a.
get,
I'm sorry.
if I guess, I would think it's probably a person that made fine gold.
That could very well be like Tiffany. It was a Tiffany belt.
Well, I mean, they used to call certain swords an Uthbert style
Yeah,
or Uthbert sword because Uthbert used to
right,
make blades back in the Viking days.
right. And that's probably what it was. It was a type of gold or cloth like that everybody knew what it was.
Right.
Like Tiffany. Yeah, that's our best guess. So a very fine belt around him. His body was like beryl, his face the appearance of lightning, his eyes flashing. Now we know at this point this is something heavenly here. This is something heavenly. This is like the appearance of God. You know, when we read about God's various appearances to the prophets, we all we a lot of times get references to beryl, and especially his face like lightning, his eyes like. So this is something heavenly, but this is not God. This is not God. Daniel could not stand before God like this, and God would not be coming down to earth in this kind of form. So this is a messenger, and because he is clothed in the appearance of God, this is a message from God. This fella is carrying a word from God himself, the most high God. Some people say this is an appearance of Jesus. Um, as we get a little further along, it doesn't look to me like it is. It Tom uh, doesn't think it is. I just don't think it is because of what happens later on. That this messenger here tells Daniel what's happening. I don't think it could be the Son of God. I don't think it could be Jesus himself. I just think this is a high level angel who is carrying a direct oracle from God, so he carries God's appearance with him to kind of seal this message to make everybody knows this is something important. So that's where I think we've only got a couple of minutes left. That's where I think I'm going to leave off tonight, um, and we will pick it up there uh, next week. Um, I wanted to tell you about the church in the Old Testament. We didn't get very far, but that has just been chewing at me for ever since I heard that and started to look at it. The church in the Old Testament. That's something that is very important to me, and I just wanted to bring it to you, especially so that you guys can help me look at that and see if I'm off in la la land or if this may be something that we may want to pay attention to because it
I was taught something just so very similar to that at a other church I went to. We went through the mystery of the church through a series of sermons.
good. I'm not crazy then.
No,
No.
Okay, but this is something that it's floored me. It's floored me. But yeah, I'm glad that at least I appear to be on the right track. So think about that this week, that we actually have a foreshadowing of the church in the Old Testament. So once again, there's nothing new under the sun. This stuff should not surprise us. That's why we're doing this here, a deep, deep study of the Bible, because these things should not surprise us. They should not surprise us. So, do we have any questions before we end the class tonight? Any questions at all?
I enjoyed it,
Yeah,
Norm.
I did.
Yes, me too. And
Thank you, Norm. Good.
you guys, we enjoyed that Alaskan cruise. I didn't mean to sound like we didn't.
I going up that up the shore of Alaska, you can't help but enjoy it.
It's so
I've seen
beautiful.
pictures, and the
Yes,
pictures can't do it justice. I don't
God's
think.
majesty on display.
Yeah, that's God's handiwork there.
Yep. Thank you very
All
much.
right.
It's
Well,
good to be back.
I hope everybody has a good rest of the week, and we'll do this again next week.
God
Thank you.
bless everyone.
Okay.
God bless.
Thanks,
Goodbye,
everybody.
everybody.
Good
Bye
night.
bye.